How I outsmarted the male lead and stole the spotlight. They say every story needs a hero, a heroine, and a villain. But what happens when the villain decides to rewrite the script? Hi, I'm Veronica Langley, perfect grades, heir to a billion-dollar empire, and apparently the designated wicked supporting character in a ridiculous live-action romance. When Alexander Pierce, a transfer student with princely looks and suspicious motives, arrives to save my stepsister Rose, I find myself stuck in a narrative I didn't sign up for. But if the world insists on casting me as the villain, I'll play the role to perfection, and maybe even steal the spotlight. Welcome to my story, where heroes fall, heroines rise, and villains like me get the last laugh. Silly story begins. But before we proceed, please like and subscribe. The day the transfer student arrived at our school, everything changed. But not in a dramatic movie sense, no. This was different. You see, as soon as Alexander Pierce walked through the door, a barrage of floating text appeared before my eyes. The wicked supporting character is bullying the heroine again. So disgusting. Don't worry. The male lead is here now. The heroine's life is about to take a turn for the better. And the kicker? Wasn't her fate to be fed to sharks? It took me a second to process. The wicked supporting character they were referring to. That would be me. Let's rewind a bit. My name's Veronica Langley, perfect grades, president of the student council, heir to my family's multi-billion-dollar corporation, and, apparently, the designated villain of this bizarre live-action rom-com. The heroine in question was my stepsister, Rose Hawthorne. She's the illegitimate daughter of my father and his mistress, which makes her complicated, to say the least. Rose's entire existence was a painful reminder of my family's fractures. My mother's early death had left me as the heir to the Langley fortune, but Rose's mother, a former socialite turned scandal, had wormed her way into my father's life, bringing Rose along as her trump card. To say I resented them both would be an understatement. Rose was quiet, painfully so, and while she rarely sought attention, her mere presence seemed to draw sympathy from everyone. She had a way of looking fragile, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders, which only made my irritation grow. I wasn't sure what was more shocking, the fact that Alexander Pierce, the new transfer student, seemed to have materialized straight out of a K-drama with his aristocratic air, or the fact that floating commentary about my fate to be devoured by sharks had become a part of my daily life. As Alexander scanned the classroom for a seat, I raised my hand lazily. "This seat's free," I called out. No one dared to sit next to me. My strict no noise, no food, military precision organization policy ensured that, but Alexander ignored me entirely. Instead, he made his way to the back of the classroom and sat beside Rose. I could practically hear the violins swell in the background as he introduced himself to her. "Hello, Rose. I'm Alexander Pierce." And then, like clockwork, another set of floating text appeared. Progress. Heroine favorability plus 10. Current favorability 10. That's when it hit me. Rose was the heroine. Alexander was the male lead. And I was the wicked supporting character destined to meet a bitter end. Well, if I'm fated to be the villain, I might as well be the best damn villain this story has ever seen. First order of business. Testing this hero saves heroine trope. In PE, I made sure Rose ended up on the tennis court with me. I served the ball hard, and it smacked her arm. "Pick it up, I ordered, not bothering to hide my smirk. Rose winced but obeyed, her wide, teary eyes darting around for help. Cue the dramatic entrance. Alexander stormed onto the court, all righteous indignation. "That's enough," he snapped, helping Rose to her feet. "Are you okay?" Ding. Heroine favorability plus 15. Current favorability, 25. Unbelievable. Was this guy running on a script? And why did Rose's favorability matter so much? The more I observed, the clearer it became. Alexander was playing a game, and Rose was his target. So naturally, I decided to throw a wrench in his plans. My first attempt to thwart Alexander involved seduction. "Alexander," I said one afternoon, matching his pace on horseback during our school's equestrian lesson. "You ride well. Perhaps you could play piano for me sometime?" I batted my eyelashes, channeling every femme fatale I'd ever seen on TV. He barely glanced at me. "No." Strike one. Later, I cornered him in the music room, my hand grazing his jawline. "Are you sure you've never felt anything for me?" I whispered, my voice dripping with honey. His reaction? He shoved me away like I was a persistent fly. "You're cruel," he snapped. "You take out your anger on Rose because you can't confront your father." Ouch. Low blow. I couldn't help but laugh though. "Whoa, Alexander, you think you've got me all figured out? Cute. Let's see how long that confidence lasts." Clearly, I needed a new approach. If Alexander wanted to play the hero, I'd give him a challenge he couldn't ignore. I orchestrated a series of accidents for Rose. A falling flower pot, a basketball hoop screw coming loose, even slipping an allergen into her lunch. Every single time, Alexander swooped in to save her. Ding. Heroine favorability +5. Current favorability, 60. But instead of breaking them apart, my schemes only made their bonds stronger. Rose started looking at Alexander with stars in her eyes, and his protective gestures grew more elaborate. Rose wasn't just his mission. She was starting to believe he was her knight in shining armor. At one point, I saw them in the library, Rose laughing softly at something Alexander had said. She rarely laughed. Her usual demeanor was that of someone bracing for impact. Seeing her genuinely smile was rare and deeply annoying. I stepped closer, pretending to browse the shelves. How adorable, I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. The knight and his damsel in distress. Rose flinched, her expression immediately shuddering back to meekness. Alexander, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes. Do you ever get tired of this, Veronica? He asked, his tone calm but sharp. Tired of what? I shot back, pointing out how laughably predictable this whole charade is. Never. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing, turning his attention back to Rose. That's when I realized Alexander wasn't just playing the role of a hero. He genuinely thought he could fix Rose, like she was some broken doll in need of repair. And that infuriated me more than anything. The turning point came at the school's Christmas ball. I watched from the balcony as Rose took to the stage in her elegant gown, ready to perform a solo dance that she'd worked on for months. Her fingers trembled as she adjusted her dress, a fleeting moment of vulnerability that made even me pause. Despite everything, Rose was determined to shine tonight. Then, the lights cut out, and a massive banner descended. Daughter of a mistress. Shameless homewrecker. The words were cruel, crude, and unforgiving. The crowd gasped in shock. Rose froze on stage, trembling. And, right on cue, Alexander appeared. He pulled her into a waltz, shielding her from the crowd's judgmental stares. They moved together, perfect harmony and all. His hand on her waist, his gaze locked on hers. A picture, perfect rescue. Ding. Heroine favorability +10. Current favorability, 95. I almost applauded. It was a masterful performance, one that would cement his role as Rose's savior. But Alexander underestimated me. When he plugged a USB into the school's projector, claiming it contained proof of my bullying, the video that played wasn't what he expected. Instead, it showed him orchestrating Rose's humiliation step by step. The crowd turned on him instantly. Gasps. Whispers. Someone even threw a shoe. Alexander's face drained of color as he spun to face Rose. I can't explain, but Rose wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. And for the first time, her gaze wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with respect. Ding. Heroine favorability +10. Current favorability, 105. Alexander's world shattered that night. But my plan wasn't done yet. As he stumbled off the stage, humiliated and drenched in panic, I made my move. The whispers in the crowd grew louder. Parents, students, and even faculty began murmuring about how Alexander had manipulated events to torment Rose. It was delicious. Alexander Pierce, I called, stepping into the spotlight myself. My voice rang loud and clear, slicing through the chaos. You've been exposed. All this time, you thought you were the hero of the story. But let's get one thing straight. Heroes don't create victims. Rose, now standing at the edge of the stage, added her own voice. Veronica is right, she said, surprising even me. Her voice, though soft, carried strength. I've been quiet for far too long, but I won't let you play with my life anymore. Alexander froze, his face pale. Rose, I didn't mean. Save it. I interjected, smirking. You're done here. And if you ever try to pull a stunt like this again, trust me, I'll make sure you regret it. The crowd erupted in applause, their support now firmly behind Rose and me. As Alexander slunk away, his reputation in tatters, I turned to Rose. For the first time, we exchanged a look of mutual understanding. The aftermath was even sweeter. The school expelled Alexander after reviewing the evidence, and his family pulled strings to avoid further scandal. But the damage was done. Rose and I began to rebuild, not as friends, not yet, but as allies. And as for me, my role as the supposed villain had never felt so satisfying.